most basic tool that you will have in your kitchen are your knives. Knives can be a really great investment and can pay you back many times over. A sharp knife can make the job of cutting and chopping much easier and much neater, and if you have good knife skills, you can be much more efficient and speedy in preparation of food. When you go to shop for a knife, you should always ask to hold the knife. It should feel good in your hand. It doesn't matter whether it's a cheap knife or a $400 knife, it should still feel good in your hand. The handle needs to be able to fit in your hand, and it needs to feel weighted and balanced. So when you're choosing a knife, you want to look at the different parts of the knife. Depending on the function of the knife, you may have a wide spine. This is a chef's knife. It has a long blade, a wide blade, and it has a thick spine. The spine is this part back here, okay? Runs from the tip all the way down. And a chef's knife, that's going to be wide. In a carving knife or a utility knife, it's going to be narrower. But in a chef's knife, this adds bulk and weight, and the weight is what makes the knife do a lot of the work instead of you. You're also going to have a bolster to a knife. That's this part right here. It's where the blade joins the handle, and it's where your fingers are going to rest quite often when you're using that knife. If you continue on down the knife spine, you'll find what we call the tang. That's this part here. In a good knife, the tang should extend all the way to the base of the handle. This adds durability and weight to the knife. And last but not least, you need to examine the handle. If it's a knife that has rivets, they should be very smooth so that you can't feel them when you're gripping the handle. You don't want to irritate your hand and wear a blister on a rivet that's sticking out of your knife handle. There are a lot of different types of knives in the marketplace. The first knife that I feel is most important in my kitchen is a chef's knife. This is the workhorse of the kitchen. This is for chopping and slicing and dicing and doing all of those things that you do every single day in your kitchen. You can also accomplish these same tasks with a santoku knife. Now this knife is about half the weight of a chef's knife. It has a much different shape to the blade. This is the Asian version of a chef's knife, and typically the newer ones have a bit of a curve to the blade so that it will rock back and forth on the board. This is the santoku knife. It's pretty much interchangeable with the chef's knife. The next knife that I find very useful in my kitchen is called a utility knife, because this is a knife that's a bit smaller. You're able to do more curved things with it because the blade is thinner. It will curve through foods. This is a great knife to use for doing those smaller jobs in the kitchen. And utility knives range from 6 inches to around 4 inches in length. When you get a knife a bit shorter than that, it's a paring knife. This is the great knife to use for peeling fruits and vegetables, for coring tomatoes, doing those small tasks. Big tasks, big knife. Small tasks, use the small knife. Another knife that I find indispensable in my kitchen is a flexible boning knife. If you look at this knife from the side, it looks very much like a utility knife. If you look at it from the spine on, you can see that it has a very thin blade. And the thinness of this blade is what makes it so wonderful in my kitchen. Look how flexible this knife is. It cuts tomatoes like a dream. It's a perfect knife for boning a fish. This is one of my all-time favorites. Once you have a complement of knives to use for everyday tasks, you may want to get a serrated edge knife. Now this particular one is a bread and pastry knife. It's very long because it's meant to cut through cakes sideways. It's also great for breads. If you notice that the teeth on this particular one, the serrated part is cut in a scallop pattern, but the point of the scallop is at the edge of the knife and the curve of the scallop is up in the blade. And the points going down make this knife work very much like teeth. It tears into breads and cakes. If I tried to cut meat with this particular knife, it would shred it. There are other serrated edge knives on the market that have the scallop pattern in the reverse direction. So you'll have the point up in the knife and the curved part pointing down. Those are slicing knives for meats, and they do a wonderful job of slicing beautiful, thin slices. So once you've chosen the kind of knives you're going to have in your kitchen, you need to understand how to take care of them when you get them home. You need to store them properly. It's not only an issue for prolonging the life of your knife and keeping your knife sharp, but it's a safety issue as well. You can store your knives in a knife block on the counter. You can get a special block that fits in a drawer that has slots to put your knives inside so that they're not banging into each other in the drawer. And you would never want to reach your hand into a drawer full of knives rattling around. That's a big safety issue. You can use a magnetic strip and hang your knives on the wall if you have a place in your kitchen to do that. If you don't have any of those options and you need to store your knife in a drawer, then you need to look for these. This is a knife sheath. They look like this. They come in different sizes, lengths, and widths. And your knife blade simply fits down in here and stays protected, and you're protected from it. Now this could go into a drawer and it would be just fine. It's also a great thing to have if you need to travel with your knives, if you need to take them to a friend's house, if you need to take them to a cooking class. This is a wonderful thing to have. So once you've chosen your knives and you've gotten them home and you've figured out how you're going to store them, the next thing you need to do is take great care of them. Never ever leave your knives in the sink. The water can make the blades rust, and it's not good for the handles. Again, it's a safety issue. You don't want to stick your hands in a sink with knives. And periodically, you're going to need to look after the edges of the knives. I recommend that you get your knives professionally sharpened at least once a year. In the meantime, you need to take care of it at home. And that's what this is for. This is called a sharpening steel. When you buy a good knife, make sure that you get a steel that's at least as good a quality as the knife that you just purchased. This is the thing that's going to keep the edge on that knife until you take it in to get it professionally sharpened. It doesn't put a new edge on the knife, it just pushes it back into shape so that it's very sharp. And I want to show you how to use this because this is an important tool in your kitchen. So here's my knife steel and here's my knife. If I put them perpendicular, this is 90 degrees. If I tilt it here, this is 45. Go down half again, that's 22. That's the angle that we're looking for, 22 degrees. Start at the base of the blade and go all the way to the tip. And typically, I rotate from one side of the knife to the other to make sure that I'm honing equally on both sides of the knife, from the base to the blade. I recommend that you do this facing the kitchen countertop so that no one can come up to you when you're honing your knives. You can do it holding the steel away from you in this fashion. You can hold the steel up and bring your knife down towards you this way. Or you can put the steel on the cutting board and hone your knife this way. All work equally as well. You just need to use the position that works best for you. So once you have a sharp knife, you'll find that it's going to make the task of cutting and chopping things in your kitchen much easier and much faster. And working on your knife skills is going to help that as well. So I wanted to show you some quick tips about how to hold a knife and how to work on your knife skills at home. Let me show you some basic things that you need to know about being efficient and speedy with your knife. There are two basic holds to knives. One is the handle grip, where your fingers are here, all your fingers are on the handle. Sometimes your forefinger is here, sometimes your forefinger is up on the spine of the knife. When you get your knife in this position in your dominant hand, your other hand should be either holding the food, or sometimes it will be holding the tip of the knife here. And as you're working with the knife, instead of using that up and down chopping motion like this, get in the habit of doing a bit of sliding motion like a skate, so that what you hear is a shushing noise as the knife moves on the cutting board. You're going to be much more efficient because the blade now is sliding through the food versus being forced through the food as you're pushing down. The other basic hold is called the blade grip. And if you notice, my hand has moved up onto the blade. My forefinger and my thumb are gripping the blade now, not just the handle, but I'm all the way up on the blade of the knife. Okay? Again, this is my dominant hand. My non-dominant hand is either going to be holding the food or it's going to be here holding the tip of the knife in place. And the same applies. You're going to move the knife slowly toward the tip so you get a slicing motion, not a chopping motion. You should be hearing a shush when you're doing this, not okay? All right, so let me show you a very quick way to slice. First thing you need to remember is to stabilize your food no matter what you're doing. A potato is a great thing to practice your knife skills on because it's inexpensive, it's readily available. Typically you're already going to have one anyway. So the first thing you want to do is take a slice off of the side so that the potato now has a nice, flat, stable place to rest. From here, we can easily slice this potato, and what I want you to keep in mind as you're slicing is that you want to stay within this third of the knife blade. A knife works very much like a lever, and the further out you come, the more efficient you are. If your hand is out here and the food is out here, you have to push a lot harder to cut it than if the food is here. The other thing that happens is that my hands are closer together in this position, so I have a lot more control. So as I'm slicing, I'm using this portion of the knife, just like that. And it's cut, 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 move the food. Now this hand can have two positions as well when you're holding food. You can either use a claw, which is very much like this, and you can push the food with your thumb through. Again, it's the same routine. It's cut, 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 move the food, move your fingers, cut, cut, cut. And as you do this, you'll become more efficient and you can gain speed with a little bit of practice. The other hold for this hand is called the parallel finger hold, and that's where your fingers are parallel to the blade of the knife here. And again, it's the same. Cut, 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 move your fingers. Cut, 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 move your fingers. We're still using this portion of the knife because we're far more efficient with that. A good knife is a significant investment in your kitchen, but one that you will use and enjoy for many years.